An irritated male voice demanded she repeat her last words. He couldn't have misheard, could he? The Duke Whitlow's prize flower had just proposed to him. The girl realized she'd screwed up big time. She'd run from one monster, only to end up in another's den. The girl had mistakenly believed this ruthless and savage man could protect her. Fear gripped her entire body, but she knew there was no turning back now. There was almost no chance of escape, and the look in his eyes confirmed it. The guy retorted that she didn't even realize what she was offering him. He loomed over her, leaving her no chance to resist. Casually touching her face, the dark-haired man asked if she even knew what marriage was. Running a finger along her lower lip, the guy figured she knew all about what couples do. His hand softened, like he was waiting for her to say something. Trying not to freak out, she said she knew what married folks were up to. Then she cheekily added that they weren't exactly married right now. That bold move kinda took the steam out of him, but also made him laugh. A second later, he gave her this look of total letdown and told her to get lost. As he walked away, she thought about how, back in the day, she'd be too ashamed to even look up. But the thing is, this big shot Alfred offered her dad a gold mine in exchange for her. Her dad didn't hesitate for a second and was about to hand her over. She wanted to avoid that deal, and the only way to do it was to get a better offer. The heroine walked up to the guy and promised she'd treat him right, if he agreed to her terms. She was hoping the dark-haired dude would offer the Duke the more valuable Bennett gold mine, so she could stick with this guy. The guy was like, "Why does she think she's worth more than my mine?" The heroine shot back that, unlike the mine, she still had some life left in her. The dark-haired guy got suspicious, wondering how she knew about the state of the mine. There's no way that kind of intel could have leaked out. The girl knew ahead of time what the Beast King was planning to pull off. The guy moved in close again, real menacing, showing he could mess her up any second. He started threatening her, telling her to watch her mouth if she didn't want to kick the bucket before her time. The girl pointed out that if she went down, she was taking his head with her. What's more, his whole plan would fall apart, and he'd die a miserable death. So, the only way to save myself and my fortune is to take a wife. The guy couldn't figure out how this sassy woman wasn't scared, considering he could end her life on a whim. They called her Duke Whitlow's prized flower, and she knew how to handle pressure like nobody's business. The guy cooled down and apologized to Lady Whitlow for his behavior. Then, he wanted to know why she'd want to marry a beast man, who, according to her, was about to go belly up and die. She just wanted to escape the Earl's estate where she's currently living. She added that she'd do anything to make it happen, and was already planning how to upgrade the local greenhouse. She'd never forget what had happened just before all this. She'd always lived in a daze. But that day, she had a feeling her time was up. A man's hands were clamped tight around her throat, and she couldn't make a sound. She felt her life slipping away, and in that final moment, a fierce desire to live surged within her. Suddenly, a voice in her head, a complete stranger, wanted to know if she really meant it. After that, a blinding light enveloped her, and a feeling of lightness washed over her entire body. The last thing she remembered was a voice telling her to keep on living. A month had passed since she'd died, and then, somehow, come back to life. When she kicked the bucket, she hadn't even hit 40 yet. After her death, visions of what was to come flooded her mind like a wild, crazy dream. When she woke up, she was 20 years old again. Once she was sure it wasn't just some crazy dream, she rushed off to see Cleveland Green. He hadn't contacted her at all, which was seriously starting to freak her out. The door to the room burst open, and a woman's voice immediately called out, saying the girl was stalling again. The smug blonde reminded her that the heroine's future husband was coming over today. The blonde pretended to struggle to recall the name of the businessman who was about to marry Iris. A second later, the pleased sister announced that the man's name was Alfred. The girl grabbed the heroine by the hair and reminded her that it was extremely important to make a good first impression. Getting closer, the blonde added that Iris's mother wasn't exactly a saint, and the girl should be grateful to their family for this marriage. Iris shot back that she could say the same about the blonde's father. Such unbelievable nerve shocked the girl. She was about to give the heroine a piece of her mind, but they were interrupted by a maid. She announced that Count Cleveland Green had arrived. Green mentioned he'd heard Duke Whitlow's daughter was a real looker, and her dad figured he meant Brittany. Brittany rushed right over to the guest, announcing she'd just heard about the Earl's arrival. The Earl greeted Lady Whitlow with all due respect. He stepped closer and gave the beaming girl a little bow. Then, out of nowhere, the guy just kept walking. Brittany didn't get what just happened and froze for a few seconds. She knew this handsome dude was under the Emperor's protection, and his social standing was basically Duke level. Basically, the most popular guy around just walked into their house. Just then, the Earl took Lady Whitlow's hand. The guy dropped to one knee, kissed her hand, and introduced himself as Cavelin Green. Right after that, he popped the question to the main girl. She didn't let on, but she was thrilled he chose her. The head of the family was furious at what was happening and demanded an explanation from the Earl right then and there. He asked how it was possible that he didn't have eyes for Brittany. The Earl never mentioned Brittany. He's only interested in Lady Iris. This news floored Brittany. She couldn't wrap her head around how this could even happen. The blonde couldn't understand how this hottie could pick a dummy like Iris. Brittany thought the whole thing was total BS, and in her opinion, Iris had no right to accept his proposal. The father tried to challenge the Earl's decision, since the older daughter wasn't married yet. The Earl didn't see a problem with it, saying plenty of younger daughters get hitched first. After that, the guy's expression turned dead serious. He asked if the man really thought Cave Landgreen wasn't good enough for his daughter. The father immediately said that wasn't the case at all. Brittany wouldn't let it go, reminding everyone the Count had just asked her to dance. The Count smirked. He seemed to already be amused by his upcoming reply. He shot back that the blonde must have a memory problem, because that night he didn't ask Brittany, she asked him. Green only agreed out of politeness, but apparently his kind gesture was misconstrued. The guy apologized for leading the girl on. For a few seconds, a heavy, silent atmosphere settled over the room. The head of the family didn't understand what was going on, but turning down the Count would be a dumb move. Just then, the Earl asked his chosen one if she had anything she wanted to say. Her father grabbed at that lifeline, waiting for the girl's answer. Iris looked at her soon-to-be husband. She'd known her answer for a while. To give her a sense of confidence, the Earl offered his hand. Looks like that was the gesture our main character was waiting for. She placed her hand in his and accepted his proposal. Looks like she can finally put those engagement worries from her past life behind her. But then Brittany just had to scream out that she was against the wedding. Hoping her father could come up with something, Brittany told him it was too soon for Iris to get married. Her father understood her emotions. After all, she'd been planning to snag the Earl for herself for ages. My dad's answer was totally out of left field. He told her to get to her room. After that grand entrance, the two of them were headed to the Count's estate. She asked the dark-haired guy how he knew about today. She explained that Viscount Alfred was supposed to arrive today to discuss marrying her. So, in her opinion, the Count showing up today wasn't just a coincidence. The Count offered Duke Whitlow his gold mine in exchange for her. After he showed the official papers proving the mine's ownership had changed, the guy pulled her into a hug. He told the Duke he was taking Lady Iris with him right then and there. She was surprised that the dark-haired dude showed up with a contract and was taking her immediately. Now all that was behind them, and the couple was riding peacefully in the carriage. Meanwhile, screams echoed along one of the roads. Mercenaries ambushed the carriage, already taking down all the guards. The carriage owner was terrified, thinking he was next. The guy was in shock that these three masked dudes wiped the floor with his elite security detail. One of the mercenaries decided he'd handle the last guy himself. The man screamed for the mercenary to stay away from him, but the masked guy wasn't listening and drew his sword again. The new couple didn't hear or see any of this. The girl wanted to know how much longer the ride would take. She remembered rushing to get there last time, but things were different now. Iris noticed the Earl was looking at her expectantly. She asked what his look meant, but he just said she seemed way too relaxed. The girl knew what the Earl was getting at, considering her situation. Basically, she'd sold herself, but she wasn't even sweating it. Her future husband pointed out that even though she'd escaped her estate, she shouldn't let her guard down. It's dangerous to think of her new home as some safe and cozy little haven. The girl understood, because her future husband was actually a beast man. The man added that she shouldn't act like she knows everything, because she really doesn't know Jack. After that, Kevlin wondered, how could the girl protect herself right now? She looked at him and just gave him a mysterious little smile. She was scared of the guy, but not nearly as scared as she was of going back home. The girl pointed out that, clearly, he didn't totally trust her, even after she told him about his future. Then, taking his hand, Iris said he'd have to see those events first. That's the only way he'd believe her. Suddenly, the guy leaned in close to her and gave her a good look. A second later, he yanked her in hard. Now that she was sitting on him, the Count replied that he wasn't afraid of her or the future. Being way too close and in a compromising position, the girl realized she wasn't ready for this. She tried to stop her future husband, but that only made him more insistent. The guy whispered in her ear that she claimed to know everything. Still holding her hand tight, the blonde told her that it was starting to make him nervous. A second later, his lips were way too close. Looks like this first kiss is happening way sooner than I wanted. Just then, she heard the coachman's sweet voice saying they were getting close to Dakota. The guy immediately let Iris go, and she scrambled back into her seat. The Count asked her to take a good look out the window. He wanted to know if this place looked anything like that greenhouse she mentioned when they first met. Before she knew it, she was checking out the view from her new digs. The guy asked how she was settling into her room. Then the Count dropped a bomb, saying that starting today, they'd be sharing a bed. She pointed out that sharing a bed is usually a husband and wife kind of thing. Then she smiled and asked the Count if he could start calling her Iris. The dark-haired dude was digging her act. She was totally exceeding his expectations. If she's gonna be airy, then she needs to call the Earl K. She wanted to bring up the whole sharing a room thing, but didn't know how to start. She figured couples in arranged marriages usually crash in separate rooms. The dark-haired guy noticed she was lost in thought and saw an opening. He pulled her close, pointing out the Countess was forgetting something. When he leaned in for a kiss, Iris thought, okay, the game's afoot. Kay thought it was no big deal, especially since he wasn't human. But Iris saw it differently. She pushed him back, saying he still had a lot to show her. She needed Kay to give her some time to get used to him. The guy backed off, willing to give her some time to adjust. Iris figured, even in her wildest dreams, she never thought she'd see a werbeast. But right now, swirling darkness was rising up in front of her. But this darkness wasn't scary. When the darkness cleared, a huge wolf was staring right at her. The girl noticed the wolf was way bigger than she imagined. The wolf asked if he looked intimidating, but Iris didn't see anything threatening. She touched the animal's fur and realized, at the same time, that the wolf was actually kind of cute. The girl didn't know why fate had decided he was gonna die. She remembered all that waited for him was a shredded pelt and the metallic tang of blood. The Count dedicated his whole life to protecting sacred relics. She doubted the guy saw that coming, especially with how strong he was. He ended up kicking the bucket, defending what he believed in, his truth. Stroking his fur now, she just felt how messed up it all was. Caught up in the moment, she hugged the wolf, which totally caught him off guard. Raising a paw, the wolf quietly warned her she'd regret this one day. She just squeezed him tighter, saying it was her choice and she wouldn't. From that moment on, Kai knew his wife had guts. Seeing a naked dude, especially one she was hugging, totally threw her for a loop. A second later, she felt super awkward and embarrassed about what she'd done. A few seconds after that, the whole castle heard her scream. Hearing that ear-splitting scream, a bunch of guys came charging into the room. The first one threw open the door, looking for the young lady. When they saw our main characters, the dudes who rushed in just froze, totally confused. The servant asked what the heck the master was doing to scare the girl like that. The Earl pointed out that it's not cool to barge into a newlywed's room without knocking. The servant stepped in front of the girl and apologized on behalf of all the beast people for their master's, unconventional behavior. Another servant, meanwhile, was trying to get the Earl to understand that, hey, maybe you should put some clothes on before greeting a lady. The guy added that their master is usually a real class act. The servants will always be ready to help their mistress, no matter what. By the end of the apologies, the two servants finally managed to get the Earl fully dressed. The girl looked around at everyone and just burst out laughing. After that, the guys finally decided to introduce themselves. The blonde was named Nathan, and he was a master of close combat. The servant on the right was Wallace, and the one on the left was Eugene. Wallace asked the girl to keep an eye on their boss, since he could clearly use a woman's touch. The disgruntled groom-to-be pointed out that he hadn't even finished showing her around the mansion yet. The servants understood that the Earl wanted to be alone with the girl, and quickly headed out. Once they were alone, Kai called the servants little rascals. Even so, they all get along great, because they're one family, one pack. The girl didn't expect the brunette to call his servants part of the family. The heroine thought that maybe she'd become part of their family too. Meanwhile, Brittany was seething about her sister's upcoming marriage to Earl Green. She couldn't wrap her head around how her own father could do this to his favorite daughter. Her father tried to explain to the blonde that this marriage was extremely beneficial for their family, because of the mine he gifted. The girl didn't give a damn about the family's benefit or the mine. Brittany believed that the Earl should belong only to her, and definitely not to that lowlife. Brittany's mom pointed out that her daughter's pursuit of becoming a countess was simply a waste of time. Mom was surprised that the contemptible weed she raised actually came in handy. The head of the family, on the other hand, believed that Brittany would rise far above Iris. Why should Brittany be hung up on the Earl when she has the prospect of marrying the crown prince? The possibility of becoming a princess immediately pleased Brittany, and she calmed down about Iris taking the Earl. She was already salivating at the thought of getting back at her little sister. The girl decided that writing a letter would be the best place to start. The evening of her first day in the new house crept in unnoticed. The Earl noticed that their lunch had turned into a late dinner. He was curious to know what Iris liked most about his castle. It was hard for her to choose. The whole place was comfortable, and the castle was decorated with great taste. The guy had been showing her around the palace for hours. This time, he was talking about the banquet hall. The couple walked hand in hand, even though it felt strange to both of them. Iris figured the guy could have just asked his butler to give her the tour. The fact that Kay decided to show her everything personally was a pleasant surprise for the girl. The heroine sensed that the man was being genuine with her. Now, the brunette seemed way kinder to her than she'd first thought. At dinner, the girl thanked her soon-to-be husband for showing her everything himself. An image of Kay flashed in her mind when he changed back from a wolf into a human. Iris was snapped out of her thoughts by the guy's light touch. He wondered if she wanted to, repay his kindness right then and there. The man added that she should change her clothes, and he'd do his best to, live up to her expectations. She couldn't change, because this was the only outfit she owned from her old place. Despite the unexpected reply that kinda killed the mood, the Earl didn't lose his cool. The man stood up and offered her his robe. He started stripping right then and there, and the girl, totally stunned, told him not to be ridiculous. Before she knew it, her hubby was right up in her personal space. A second later, he was standing in front of her practically naked again, continuing to freak her out and embarrass her. Kai put his robe on her. Then he added that even though he put the robe on her, he wanted to take it right back off. The guy added that he thought his darling wife was gorgeous. The next thing you know, he's all over her, saying he could just eat her up right now. In the end, all of Iris's clothes and the robe were just lying on the floor. The soon-to-be-married couple were lying in bed, snuggled under a warm blanket. The guy looked at the sleeping girl and figured she must have been super tired today, since she crashed almost instantly. He kissed his wife gently, but felt like he was living a lie. Careful not to wake Iris, he quietly got out of bed. He felt this weird sensation bubbling up inside him. Kay had always been scared and ashamed to show people who he really was. But this girl didn't give a damn about his quirks. He kissed her again, hoping she'd be happy living with him. Then he slipped out quietly and gently closed the bedroom door. Just then, one of the maids called out to him. Cave knew she was after something, so he cut to the chase and asked her what was up. The girl's name was Gillette, and it looked like this hallway meetup wasn't an accident. The maid, with a sly look on her face, asked if there was anything she could do for her master. The next morning, the weather was absolutely gorgeous. Gazing out the window, the girl really wanted to go for a walk and maybe grab some sorbet. Making those wishes come true was a problem because she didn't have any spare clothes and the maids had taken her dress. In her past life, the girl never even thought about such little things. Iris was pulled from her thoughts by a knock. She wondered who was visiting so early. It was one of the servants, and he was about to introduce someone to her. The doors opened, and Wallace entered the room with a stranger. The blonde guy couldn't introduce himself yesterday, since he didn't immediately know about Milady's arrival at the house. Turns out, he's the Earl's butler, named Jamie. The butler told the girl to let him know if she needed anything until he could get her some maids sorted out. Iris wanted the guy to call her by her name, but he shot that down. The girl immediately asked Jamie to find her some clothes. The guy had already arranged for a tailor to come by on the weekend. The girl clarified that she needed something to wear. Right now, Iris remembered that Nathan was about her size, so she wanted to borrow some clothes from him. Wallace didn't think it was proper for a lady to wear the servant's clothes. Besides, the girl didn't consider that Nathan's a dude. The girl thought that she had always been treated like trash, so she didn't want to become a delicate flower. This time, the heroine wanted to live life on her own terms, so she ended up saying it doesn't matter who the clothes belong to, as long as they're comfortable. The butler liked that attitude, and he cracked a little smile. The blonde replied that he'd have to raid Nathan's closet then. Standing up, the butler asked if there was anything else Madame needed. The girl said she'd like a walk in the garden and some sorbet. After that, our girl decided to clarify something. Asking if Iris could do whatever she wanted in this house caught Jamie off guard again. After a second of hesitation, the butler confirmed she was free to do as she pleased. The girl was happy that she didn't have any restrictions in this house. After a while, Milady's wishes finally came true. Walking around in shoes like these was kinda a pain for a girl. Still, she was stoked to be outside, soaking up this awesome weather. Nathan's clothes were a little baggy, but super comfy on her. Spooning ice cream and holding an umbrella at the same time? Total fail. She went to set the umbrella down, but someone snatched it right out of her hand. The sudden move totally freaked her out. It was Kay, and he was like, "Why are you chowing down on sorbet before lunch?" The Earl found out where his future wife was when he ran into the butler. She realized the Earl was talking about that polite, handsome blonde dude. Kay double-checked. "Are you sure you're talking about our butler?" When Iris said yes, Kay thought Jamie was being way too polite with her. Seeing the look on his face, she offered to share her sorbet. He stared at the offered spoon and the treat, lost in thought. Kay wished she would feed him, not from the spoon, but from her sweet lips. She really hoped he was just kidding around. But she decided to play along, so she reached for his face, wanting him to lean in. Kissing him softly and slowly, Iris wondered what she was going to do with this guy now. Moments later, he returned her kiss just as gently. They got so caught up in the kiss, they didn't even notice the umbrella falling or the spoon clattering to the ground. Pulling back slightly, Iris asked Kay what he thought of the sorbet. It tasted really sweet. Stroking his wife's hair, Kay thought he hadn't expected her decision to wear someone else's clothes. Lost in thought, he squeezed her hand a little too hard, making her uncomfortable. Realizing what he'd done, the guy immediately pulled his hand away and apologized. Gently taking a strand of her hair, Kay remarked that she needed some new outfits. Iris mentioned that Jamie had already called a tailor. She noticed that Kay reacted kind of strangely to that sentence. Even though the Earl didn't say anything, she could tell he wasn't thrilled. Suddenly, Caveland asked what he could do for his girl. She asked for a maid who could teach her etiquette and help her with things. The man promised to help and added that Viscount Alfred Hoochies would be visiting soon. The guy pointed out the Viscount's coming to demand an engagement. He looked at Milady intently, then popped the question. Kay wanted her take. What did she think about Hooches's visit, and what should they do about it? Cave wouldn't let that Viscount get within a mile of her, so he suggested just taking him out. Looks like the Earl wasn't kidding around with that threat. The girl stared at her chosen one, totally unsure how to react. Earl Green just sat there, waiting for Iris's answer. The pause stretched out. She felt like she was seeing a whole new side of Cave. Finally, she sighed and said that such drastic measures weren't necessary. Then Iris added that it wouldn't hurt to, acquire those Leventa mining rights from him. The girl was hoping the Earl would give her that mine as a wedding gift. The main character was sure Alfred wouldn't give up that easily. She imagined Hoochis raising hell at the Whitlow estate right now, begging her to come back. And don't forget about Brittany. She's definitely not going to be happy that Iris is the Countess now. She's probably already scheming, trying to find a way to ruin Iris. The girl figured those two are bound to show up at the estate real soon. The man thought Iris wasn't quite grasping the situation. He's not about to give her any wedding presents. They have a deal. She doesn't tell anyone he's a beast man, and he makes her Countess Green. That's all there is to it, no other strings attached. The girl wasn't expecting that kind of response from the Earl. If that's how he feels, she figured there was no point pushing the issue. But before leaving, she told him he was being awfully small-minded. She never thought this dark-haired dude was the type to be so reluctant to share his fortune with his wife. She added that the Green family is highly respected, but respect alone doesn't cut it. The girl believed the Green family's influence should reach every corner of the world, and she would be the one standing at the Earl's side when he reached the top. So, if he's got the cash, he needs to invest in her. The guy just said her dreams were ridiculous. Green's tone shifted, though, and he admitted these wild ambitions had definitely caught his eye. He moved in again and took the girl's hand. The guy agreed to do whatever she wanted. Caveland kissed the Countess's hand and promised to give her the Leventa mines. A few days later, Iris was looking over the info on 2 potential maids. At the same time, she was also thinking about how Kay didn't trust her with any real work. The main character noticed a nasty look directed her way. She pretended not to see the Countess and walked right past her. It was weird, but Iris decided to ignore the strange behavior of the unknown servant. She'd noticed the girl's pointedly dismissive attitude towards her a few days ago. All Iris knew was that this girl was a viscount's daughter who'd come to work as a maid on the Earl's estate. This girl was getting on the main character's nerves, and Iris figured it was time to take her down a peg. The butler announced that the maid candidates were waiting for her in the drawing room. When Milady arrived at the drawing room, Jamie decided to introduce the girls. Their names were Ervil Lutek and Christina Fernie, and the girls immediately greeted the heroine. The Fernie family was known for its talented master decorators. The other family was famous as the lineage that gave the world brilliant scientists. It only took a few minutes for the girl to size up the potential helpers. When one of the maids called the Countess the flower of the Whitlow family, the other candidate had a meltdown. She couldn't believe someone would just say that about the Countess. The brunette told Ervil to keep it down and calm herself. Turns out, these girls have known each other for ages. Lutek wasn't married, so she could live at the estate full-time, while Fernie would head back to her family 2 or 3 times a week. The main character decided to wrap things up and suggested the girls take a look around the estate before dinner. As soon as the maids were alone, they started making a racket, especially that redhead Ervil, who still couldn't believe where she was. Looks like Ervil doesn't know how to act refined, even in the Countess's house. This girl seemed more like a bodyguard than a maid. That image was perfectly completed by the knife hidden under her long skirt. Ervil figured that on top of their maid duties, they were responsible for the Countess's safety. Meanwhile, back at the Whitlow estate, Brittany's screaming echoed through the whole house again. She was furious that she'd brought Alfred in to help her get revenge on Iris. And the nerve of that lazy bum, he started hitting on her. The blonde screamed again that her whole life had been ruined because of that lowlife. The maid tried to get through to her that the Viscount had been waiting for her in the drawing room for ages. The indignant girl knew things couldn't go on like this. Entering the drawing room, Brittany noticed a very unusual scene. Hugging the maid, the Viscount announced he'd been waiting for her. The blonde thought he was a total moron who was about to get what he deserved. Brittany worried that the Viscount was upset about Iris being taken away and now wanted her back. The Viscount figured he didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of getting Iris back. Smiling mysteriously, the girl accused Alfred of being way too pessimistic. She reminded them that their Iris was still a completely pure and untouched flower. But now the girl's in another house and, well, she might have lost her innocence. The Viscount thought Brittany was talking crap, and no one would buy it. The girl pointed out the Viscount had nothing to worry about. After all, the Whitlow household can spin any lie from his mouth into a profitable truth. Christina carefully brushed the Countess's hair. The maid was grateful that her mistress had so warmly welcomed the second girl to work. For several days now, both girls have been serving the main character. There was no awkwardness between the girls and Iris. Everything was going just great. And yet, one problem clearly remained. The girls heard someone raising hell behind the door. Christina asked if she could step out and break up the fight. The girl gave her the okay and watched the maid disappear through the door. Iris sighed. She was hearing scenes like this every single day now. It wasn't Ervil's fault. It was just that Count Gillet's maid was constantly at odds with her staff. And instead of trying to fix things, their beef just kept getting worse. Pretty soon, a loud Ervil and Christina came back into the Countess's room. Christina was super calm, but even she was starting to get fed up with her friend's wild temper. Ervil had something she wanted to tell her mistress. The girl did what Iris asked, but she was furious that Gillet was always sticking his nose where it didn't belong. The main character felt for the maid. She knew things must be tough. Just knowing Lady Ervil understood the problem made her beam with happiness. Turns out, Gillet also added that she's the one in charge here, so all questions should come to her, not Iris. Christina thought this maid was seriously out of line. Iris also felt that the Count's maid was pushing her luck way too far. Unexpectedly, the heroine replied that Gillet's offer was actually helpful. Smiling, the girl added that she just so happened to need another maid. Sometime later, Gillet was sitting in the drawing room, waiting for the Countess. Gillet couldn't figure out why Iris wanted to see her. The girl had been sitting on the couch, waiting for over half an hour now. Iris finally walked into the living room, and the maid bowed to the Countess. The main character noticed that the girl never showed enough respect when talking to her, though maybe the girl just didn't get enough education back in the day, so it's not really the maid's fault. The Viscount's daughter had been living in this estate as a maid for a long time, and was the only girl here. She was probably secretly in love with Earl Green from the very beginning. It wasn't hard to guess that from Gilead's behavior and her reaction to the Earl's wife. Iris figured this chick was so confident because of how good-looking she was. And until she officially gets the wife title, Gilead's gonna treat her like competition. The girl still didn't get why she'd been called here. Iris, keeping totally calm, asked the girl to make herself comfortable on the couch. The heroine thought that kind of blatant disrespect was just plain dumb coming from someone who wanted to take her place. Gilead started getting antsy after Iris kept telling her to stand up and say hello, then sit back down and chat. The maid figured someone who wasn't even a countess yet had no business acting like she owned the place. Right then, Iris announced that from now on, the maid would be serving her. Gilead was stunned by the news and asked her to explain what she'd just said. When she realized she'd heard right, Gilead Merdi got pissed because she was the Earl's personal servant. It didn't matter whose servant Gilead was before, because now she'd be serving the countess. Gilead called it a load of bull, saying her family wouldn't serve just any countess. Iris added that she and the Earl were family now, but Gilead blurted out that she knew their marriage was just a business deal. The heroine pointed out that even if it was a business deal, it was still a real marriage. The countess was seriously bummed she had to spell out such obvious stuff about marriage to this girl. Then Iris goes and says Gilead will figure it all out eventually. Gilead wasn't about to take that kind of crap, so she spun around and headed for the door. Our girl, all fake sweet, asks where she thinks she's going. A servant doesn't just turn their back on the lady of the house. Gilead was betting the Count wouldn't be cool with this appointment. She knew she was hot stuff, and that she was the only one in that house allowed in his study. To prove she was special and put the Countess in her place, she marched right over to the Count's study. She knocked and asked to come in, but he shot her down, saying he was too busy. She was floored, but she wasn't giving up. She insisted it was super urgent. After getting rejected again, Iris walked up to Gilead. The heroine called out to Kay, saying she came to see him. Gilead immediately jumped on the Countess, pointing out the Count was busy working. Unexpectedly, the office door opened, and the Count appeared. He figured the girl came to show off a new dress or something. Kay kissed Iris's hand and asked what brought her by. Since the opportunity presented itself, now's the perfect time to tell Kay what she wants. The heroine explained that she wants Gilead as her third maid. Gilead wanted to object, but she didn't have the guts. Looking at the maid, the Count replied that he didn't have any objections. Strolling through the garden, the heroine felt completely refreshed. The maid was happy that Iris helped her get rid of that pain-in-the-butt servant. Ervil was saying how things with Giles were super tense, but then she just clammed up. And the reason she shut her mouth was Giles, who was walking right towards our girl. Giles gave the Countess a silent, polite bow. It's been a week since Giles became Iris's maid, and the girl's definitely gotten a lot more obedient. Still, she hasn't exactly made friends with the other maids, and they still give Iris major attitude. After that awkward run-in the garden, Giles decided to bail on the Countess ASAP. Ervil didn't like her dipping out so fast, so she called out to the maid. She started yelling that Giles thought she was too good to hang out with a regular servant. That girl was convinced the snake behind their backs was tearing them to shreds. The protagonist mulled over her friend's words. Maybe Ervel was exaggerating, but Iris really couldn't figure out what Giles was up to. Soon, rumors started circulating among the maids that the Countess wasn't wearing a wedding ring. That led to speculation that the Earl decided to marry for convenience. According to Giles, because the marriage was just a formality, they decided to skip the big celebration and all the frills. One of the maids added that her previous employers also had a marriage of convenience, but they still had a wedding. The maids eagerly listened to Giles' stories. Their gossip session was interrupted. Hearing the butler's voice, the maids apologized and scattered to their duties. Jamie was so over these kinds of conversations. He noticed the maids' gossip about the Earl, and Countess was getting worse every day. The guy wanted to shut down the rumors, but Iris thought these little things weren't worth paying attention to. On his way, the butler suddenly ran into Caveland. The Earl was lost in thought and seemed happy to see his assistant. He asked where the butler was headed, making sure the guy was going to Iris. Then, Green snatched all the papers from the servant's hands, saying he'd take them to her himself. Jamie felt played, but you can't argue with the boss. When the Earl came in, the girl was busy reading a book. She was super surprised to see Kay, and he was glad she wasn't busy. The dark-haired dude figured he'd swing by. since he actually had some free time today. Plus, he was bringing her that thing she asked Jamie for, so that was a good excuse to visit. The Earl wasn't sure if she'd even seen the whole mansion yet. Once he found out Iris hadn't seen everything, the Earl decided to make a move. He pulled her close and suggested they take a tour together. She started blushing, totally caught off guard by how close he was. Taking the Countess's hand, Kay mentioned they had a real problem in the house, a real nasty piece of work. She just shot back that maybe Caveland hadn't trained it right. The Earl was floored when he realized she was talking about his former maid, Gillet. Kay panicked, thinking Iris thought he'd been, involved with Gillet. The girl just pointed out, kinda shyly, that he was standing a little too close for comfort. The dude didn't see a problem with it. He squeezed Iris's hand tighter and said he was the only one worthy of getting that close to her. Then he added that she was the only one who even deserved to touch him. Kay whispered in Iris's ear that he only let the maid get away with stuff because her family was useful. That didn't really impress her, so she asked him to get rid of the useless maid. The Count agreed, and in exchange for doing it, he wanted to let her in on a huge secret. After that, the dark-haired guy led her somewhere, and they walked for a crazy long time. After a while, Caveland announced that they'd arrived. The girl commented that the tower looked seriously creepy. The dude asked for a sec, then started morphing into a wolf. After the change, he put his paw right on the circle on the wall. Turns out, you can only open this door with a paw print. Now the girl's super curious about this whole place. Turns out, they've come to a place where they keep magical relics. The Count kept going on about the power of the relics and respecting those who can use them. The girl was blown away by what she saw, and she wasn't hiding it. Our girl was so hyped, she could barely breathe, seeing the relics up close like that. The wolf warned Iris that she absolutely couldn't touch the relics, because it's dangerous. There have been times when someone accidentally touched a relic, and well, they kicked the bucket right then and there. There are even records of people dying just from standing near the relics. Ancient notes exist that mention sorcerers who could control the relics. Maybe those sorcerers still exist, but they probably wouldn't risk touching these artifacts. Wolf added that the relics in front of them were relatively safe. For example, the sword heals the wounded and sick, and the cloak makes the body invisible. The Count stopped talking, and Wolf's ears perked up sharply. In his beast form, Green felt everything more acutely, so he knew about their visitor. Looks like someone has arrived at the mansion who's the last person she wanted to see. It was her husband from her past life, Alfred Hucius. Most of the maids were trying to eavesdrop on the arriving guest's words. He was telling a story about his first kiss with the girl, emphasizing her beauty and tenderness. After that kiss, the Viscount decided he wanted to dedicate his life to Iris. The butler thought the guest was nuts, especially after he claimed Iris felt the same way about him. Alfred finished his speech and knew he'd nailed it. He replayed his words in his head, making sure he hadn't screwed anything up. Hooches couldn't believe such cheesy lines had such a powerful effect. One of the maids warned the others they needed to hurry because the Earl was coming back. The maids ran from the room in a panic. The Earl remarked that they'd been getting way too many visitors lately. Then Caveland added that all the guests would pay for their lies and backstabbing. The dark-haired guy's words shook the Viscount's confidence, and he started mumbling something about himself and Iris. Seeing the fear creep across the guy's face, the Earl addressed him by his title, Viscount. When the Viscount finally looked at the head of the house, Kay wanted to know what exactly he wanted from his wife. Caveland spoke calmly, but every word dripped with menace. Out of nowhere, the Earl offered to buy the mines that Hooches was trying to sell to the Duke for Iris. Alfred lost it at such a bold offer. He couldn't believe the Earl had the nerve to even suggest it. Then Caveland announced he'd buy the mines for 10% below market value. The Viscount started refusing like crazy, but the Earl wasn't backing down. Stepping up to Alfred, Kay made it clear he was only discussing this deal, and nothing else. The guest felt this insane pressure and started to lose his grip on what was happening. Suddenly, Hooches pulled himself together and yelled that Iris was his woman, and that was that. The Viscount thought even being an Earl didn't give Kay the right to act like that. The guy just smirked and quietly said he honestly tried to do things the nice way. Then, the Earl suddenly grabbed the Viscount by his clothes. The Viscount kept yelling that he wouldn't leave poor Iris with such a low-life thug and jerk. The homeowner was sure the Viscount would make her life miserable with his awful personality. Caveland suggested they move somewhere else to have a more productive talk. After that, the guy dragged the Viscount down to the mansion's basement. Picking up a knife, the Earl spoke to Viscount Hoochis again. He figured it'd be real tough for Alfred to point fingers at the Earl if he happened to lose a hand. The Earl just wanted to buy the mine at a good price. But for some reason, the guest didn't appreciate that. The dark-haired guy added that Iris was happy with him and that he'd never laid a hand on her. The Viscount still wouldn't give up, refused to sell anything, and planned to file a complaint. The guest kept insisting that the Earl was getting away with too much just because he was the keeper of the relics. After listening, Caveland calmly remarked that the guest's chatter was really starting to get on his nerves. The Earl was surprised the guest thought he could walk out of his mansion alive. Moments later, several people came down into the basement. When Alfred saw them, his fear went through the roof. He recognized those three immediately, even though they looked different this time. They were the same three thugs who'd attacked the Viscount when he was on his way to get Iris. The owner of the house decided his associates would get more out of a conversation with the guest. The guy started yelling again, telling those three to stay the hell away from him. Evening crept in, and everything was quiet in the castle. Jamie told Iris the Viscount agreed to sell the mines to the Earl. Holding the hot mug, the girl still couldn't believe she'd actually pulled it off. She remembered deliberately asking the wolf if he could take the mines himself. Whatever, a start has been made to change the Earl's future. The Viscount's mines were tapped out, but that didn't mean they were worthless. In the future, Duke Whitlow built up his power and wealth because of what he found deep in those mines. This time, the girl won't let her family's power get out of control. The Countess asked the butler to do her another favor. She was looking for a guy who used to work for her dad, but got the boot later on. The girl added that finding this guy was in the Green family's best interest. Gillette noticed the maids were buzzing about the latest gossip. This was exactly what the girl had been working towards for a long time. Now, after showing up at the Viscount's mansion, Gillette finally had a shot at making her plan a reality. It felt like there wasn't a single person in the whole mansion who didn't believe the rumors about the Countess. Of course, it wasn't long before those rumors leaked out onto the city streets. After that, the gossip about Duke Whitlow's flower had already spread among the aristocrats. Everyone started thinking the Countess was a real piece of work. One of those rumors was being dished out right now to one of the most influential ladies in town. The narrator was all fake, saying he never expected the Countess to stab the Viscount in the back like that. Turns out, the disgruntled guest was the Earl's sister. The girl burst into the room, asking Brittany if she'd seen the latest news. Brittany hadn't read the paper and didn't get why it mattered. The girl plopped down on the couch next to the blonde and started reading. The article was all about Iris, who they were calling the daughter of a family famous across the whole continent. Next to the girl's picture, the headline screamed that the Countess's secret life was exposed. The reporter acted shocked that nobody knew about the marriage between the head of the sacred family and the noble flower. Then it went on to say that the noble flower was actually a real piece of work. The girl was blown away that the Countess was like this from the jump. Brittany just said the rumors were spreading way too fast. Then the blonde confirmed to her friend that her sister really did become a countess. Reading that article instantly boosted the girl's mood. But she'd never admit to anyone that the Count himself proposed to her. Brittany wanted everyone to think Iris was chasing after every guy she could find. If that happened, everyone would think she was easy, and it would totally ruin her reputation someday. And when that happens, the Count will kick her out of his family so fast her head will spin. Brittany acted like she didn't believe the rumors, but her friend was already totally buying what the article said. Her friend asked if Brittany knew the Count's younger sister, Henrietta. Turns out Henrietta is super close with Countess Nalani, but Brittany didn't know anything about that. My friend was shocked Brittany didn't know anything about Countess Nalani. Rumor has it Nalani's been head over heels for Count Green for ages, but he shot her down. Whenever they're both at an event, she's always got her eyes glued to him. Meanwhile, the future Mr. and Mrs. Green were on their way to the party. The guy figured she really didn't need to tag along. She was sure the Count had a ton on his plate because of her, so this was her way of showing some appreciation. The dark-haired dude pointed out he's never been married, so he's still figuring out the whole married life thing. Still, he didn't think looking after her was any kind of burden. Picking up a strand of her hair, Green asked her why she was dressed so simply. She really just wanted to blend in at the event tonight. She added sadly that she hated the rumor spreading across the whole damn country. The guy found it hilarious that she didn't want to stand out. Kay replied softly that, in that case, she'd already blown it. The guy admitted he was having a real hard time taking his eyes off her. After that, Kay gently pushed her back into her seat. He started unbuttoning her blouse, saying she owed him something from last time. Green yanked Iris towards him by her ankles, making her fall right on top of the Count. Kay gave Iris a tight hug, settling her comfortably on his lap. The Count wasn't about to let her fall asleep after just one kiss tonight. Kay pulled Iris close, and his lips finally found hers. His touch tickled the girl. Kay loomed over her, his desire to possess her growing stronger. But Iris's reaction stopped him cold. With a last glimmer of hope, Iris reminded the Earl they were in a carriage. The fact they were in a carriage didn't faze the guy one bit. His hand slipped under Iris's vest, like he was asking for permission. A passionate kiss crushed Iris's inner turmoil, and giving in to her emotions, she kissed him back. She felt like she was melting with every touch. It felt good. She wanted more, but she didn't know what the right thing to do was. Horrible memories of her past life with the Viscount flashed through Iris's mind. Fear instantly gripped her. The passion vanished, and she started to tremble. The guy sensed her mood shift and stopped dead in his tracks. He told her to chill, that she was safe with him. If she wasn't feeling it, all she had to do was say no. She wasn't scared anymore. The shakes went away, and she thanked him for stopping. Kay mentioned his sister thought only the lowest of the low would ever force themselves on a woman. She was surprised the Count even had a sister. The dark-haired guy got thoughtful, saying his sister was, well, she had a very unique personality. The girl didn't quite catch what he meant by that. Meanwhile, back at Count Green's mansion, things were getting pretty wild. Turns out, a guest was giving the lion, panther, eagle, and deer a serious dressing down. The girl was dying to hear some juicy gossip from her brother's staff. She was absolutely livid that none of them had told her about the weird woman in the house. At that moment, the servants were terrified. The master's sister was scarier than he was. After calming down a bit, the girl said there was no use crying over spilled milk. Now she wanted to know where that dumb wolf was, and demanded the servants summon him immediately. The driver announced that they had arrived at their destination. Kay was surprised the heroine wanted to visit a place like this. She came all this way to introduce herself in person to the man she'd traveled for. The reason for this meeting was currently sitting surrounded by empty and full liquor bottles. He was once again hitting rock bottom today. The dude saw someone approach him and try to start a conversation, but the booze was kicking in hard. After a few seconds, his vision cleared, and he finally realized who was standing in front of him. The guy's name was Guger, and he recognized Lady Iris right away. The girl introduced Guger to her husband. This guy used to be the manager of Duke Whitlow's estate. Guger was super happy to see that his little girl had grown into a beautiful woman and married Earl Green. The girl took her former servant's hand and thanked him for always being there for her. She found out that the man lost his job just because he cared about Iris. The guy replied that he couldn't have done anything differently, because he saw that the girl was being treated way too harshly. Kay remembered the butler saying that finding this guy was crucial to the Green family. Still, he couldn't figure out why the girl needed this dude, especially since they hadn't seen each other in ages. The dark-haired guy didn't say anything, but he still thought it was super weird. Iris got down to business, saying she had a favor to ask an old friend. She wanted him to be the manager of the Laventa mine. Iris wanted the guy to handle everything personally, from hiring workers to managing the mining operations. Guger tried to refuse, saying he'd become a bit of a mess, and that kind of management was a huge responsibility. The girl stood up, trying to get across that it was about who he could be, not who he was right now. She considered Guger the only person she completely trusted. The guy was blown away by how confident the girl had become. She used to be too scared to even look the maids in the eye. Felt like I was talking to a totally different dude. Guger bowed, saying his life was now in her hands. After the talk, she stepped outside. Kay immediately griped that she could have given him a heads up about the visit. Turns out, Kay didn't want anyone working for the Whitlows inside his place. She shot back that he wouldn't be working in the house, but out at the mines. Iris added that his crew are his guys, and they wouldn't be loyal to her. She was sure they wouldn't stab him in the back, but they'd take her out easy to protect him. Back in the day, Guger's awesome skills got him recognized by the imperial court. Iris added that a husband who's always meddling in his wife's business tends to get real old, real fast. The dude was floored by those words, didn't even know how to respond. After that, he just took a deep breath and cracked a smile. He agreed to be the husband who just chills on the sidelines. Afterwards, the couple headed back, and Kay decided to bring up the letter that arrived. The letter said that Kay's sister had arrived at the mansion the day before. More than likely, thanks to the rumors, his little sister found out about the wedding and came to stir things up. She remembered her husband's family from her past life. They were rough on the main character. They were always on her case because she wasn't giving them an heir. Iris told herself that all those memories belonged to a past life. She knows what she was in for with the Alford family. Now she's got to find out about Kay's. Suddenly, the dark-haired guy perked up and clapped his hands together. Grinning, he asked how much longer he had to put up with the rumors painting him as some pathetic loser. The girl didn't expect him to care about gossip, but he was just thinking about the possibilities. The girl wondered if they should start shutting down the rumors about them right now. The next morning, Gillette's voice echoed throughout the entire mansion. She was barking orders at the servants, demanding they get the whole house spotless before the Earl got back. Henrietta and Nathan watched this scene in silence. The homeowner's sister got real curious about who this girl was, acting like she owned the place, bossing everyone around. When Green found out she was just a maid, she instantly lost it, because maids aren't supposed to act like that. Henrietta was getting seriously ticked off that her brother's wife's maids had absolutely no manners. That just poured gasoline on the fire, especially with that article that dropped in the paper. Right then and there, Wallace walks in and announces that the master's back. As the servants approached the carriage, Kay was already helping his wife out. Seeing her brother doting on his wife, the sister figured she was dealing with a real delicate flower. That just made Henrietta feel even worse about her brother's wife. As soon as Iris stepped out of the carriage, she told the servants she'd read a seriously juicy article. Looks like someone from outside the estate is working overtime to trash the Countess's reputation. It's gotta be an outsider, because her own servants wouldn't be dumb enough to pull something like that. Spotting Henrietta, Iris immediately chirped up, saying how happy she was to have guests and how thrilled she was to meet her husband's sister. Love matches do happen, but let's be real. It's always about uniting two families, but the main reason Kay didn't tell his sister about the marriage was that he straight up forgot to mention it. His loyal servants were totally floored by the news. The Earl said his head was already splitting from information overload. The guy was lost in thought, realizing he hasn't been able to think about anything else since he saw her face. Jamie thought that wasn't a good enough excuse coming from the master of the mansion. The Earl figured the situation was seriously awkward, so he should probably talk to his sister. The butler pointed out that the Earl's sister wasn't exactly keen on talking to him. Then they told him about her reaction when she showed up at his place a few days ago. After hearing the story from the servants, the guy's mood tanked hard. Jamie begged him to at least write to his father about the marriage before he showed up here too. The guy apologized to Iris for having to go through such a rough introduction to Henrietta. He wanted to tell her something before she officially met his sister. Kay revealed that besides his sister, he also has a younger brother. Nathan caught up with them, wanting to escort Iris to Henrietta and be her backup. Kaivalan thought it was a great idea since Nathan got along so well with the Count's sister. The girl couldn't figure out why everyone was so worried about her meeting Henrietta. Because of all the fuss, she was starting to get worried herself. Nathan advised Iris to just not take anything Henrietta says to heart. Iris said that if Henrietta starts bad-mouthing her, she's gonna let Nathan kick the Count's sister's butt for insulting a countess. When Iris said that, the guys were totally stunned. Nathan, especially, just couldn't wrap his head around the Countess using that kind of language. The Earl just thought, yet again, that his wife could be a real hard ass sometimes. And so, the meeting finally happened, with Henrietta giving the couple a serious stink eye. The heroine realized she'd messed up thinking the Earl was running the show in this mansion. Kaivalan started to picture Iris, but his sister cut him off real quick. Grinning, she said she wanted a little one-on-one with her new sis-in-law. Iris immediately introduced herself, saying she'd recently become Kaivalan's wife. Henrietta told her not to be formal and to call her Rhea, and the heroine immediately asked to be called Reese then. Henrietta insisted that Iris just call her sis. Rhea kept smiling, saying she was totally floored when she heard about Kai getting hitched. Her voice turning dangerous, she added she hadn't expected her brother to get hitched willingly. Then, Sis asked Iris why she'd picked her brother to be her partner. She couldn't wrap her head around living with a psycho who couldn't even tell his own parents about the wedding. That's when Nathan jumped in, telling Miss Green to watch her mouth. The girl replied that the reason she chose Kay as her husband was super simple. It's just because she really liked the guy. He had this deep, smooth voice, strong but refined features, and a sharp, stubborn chin. When Kay laughs, it's like the rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze. The heroine finished by saying she liked him, head to toe, no exceptions, and wanted to spend her whole life with him. A memory from her past life flashed back to her. Their first meeting. She didn't even bring it up, because the last thing she said already floored the guy. She also thought to herself that this dude had gotten under her skin from the jump. Sis said she got it, and that her sister's taste was definitely something. Henrietta then figured the two of them must have eloped, because they were head over heels. Sis added she was bummed out in her brother. The least he could have done was invite the family to the wedding. Lady Green was clueless why everyone looked so shell-shocked. The couple pointed out they didn't have any kind of celebration or ceremony. They just went down and made it official. That set her sister off big time, and at first, she couldn't even get her thoughts together. Finally, a yell about how that no-good brother of hers had lost his marbles echoed all over the mansion. After a while, the brother and sister were alone together in his office. Caveland wanted to know what his sister was up to, because her fake sweetness with Reese was a bad sign. The girl told him not to worry. She just wanted to be friends with his wife. She also wanted to see if Iris could handle living with their crazy family. Then she pointed out that the problem wasn't her being nice to Iris right now. She reminded the guy about the rumors that were going around about them all over town. The guy admitted that, yeah, there was definitely a problem. Cave noted that he thought Iris's stepsister was the source of the rumors. Henrietta advised the guy to fix the situation ASAP by proving the opposite. He needed to make it so people would stop looking down on his wife. Girl thought the best way to do it was to throw the biggest, most over-the-top wedding ever. The heroine was stoked to realize that with all the guests showing up at the mansion, she actually had some free time. Iris figured Henrietta probably snatched up Kay to give him a serious dressing down, which meant she could finally chill under a tree and crack open a book. It was a detailed history of the kingdom, and it said that the Holy Kingdom had long ago turned its back on the beast folk. Saint Benedict, who was supposed to be the next pope, ended up in the slammer thanks to some backstabbing plot. But the conspirators had no clue that Benedict was actually a beast man. He's the one who kicked off the whole thing that became known as the uprising of the rejected souls. Back then, beast folk lived with the same rights as regular humans. But because the pope was turning into a mouse, people got totally disgusted and couldn't stand the idea of him on the throne. Iris thought what happened was totally messed up, 'cause Benedict was a stand-up honest dude. But his good qualities couldn't erase the stain from his other situation. People saw him as just some rat, a disease-spreading nobody, not someone who could speak for God. So everyone ditched Benedict, leaving him alone with his hurt and confusion. Everyone turned on him, but the worst was when his mentor, the Pope at the time, stabbed him in the back. After gathering some like-minded folks, Benedict started a rebellion against the Holy Kingdom. The girl was pulled from her reading by her husband's voice. She asked if he was done chatting with his sister. Caveland suggested they take a little walk. She pointed out that his sister had a pretty cute nickname for him. The dude didn't get how being called Chowhound could be cute. Henrietta started calling her brother that because he could shapeshift since he was born. He mentioned he used to think everyone liked him, but he only realized that wasn't true when he grew up. When it hit him, his whole world crumbled, and he felt totally lost. The girl waited for him to finish talking about that time. It was clearly tough for him. Back then, he was almost always in wolf form, eating and sleeping a lot, and got kinda chubby, so his sister gave him that nickname. The girl felt bad that she brought up such a difficult topic for him. He didn't see it as a problem, and reminded her that he always has to be ready for danger, being a beast man. He grabbed an apple and said that now they're both in the same boat. Kay pointed out that his sister had come up with a ton of nicknames for him, actually. The dark-haired dude grabbed the girl's hands and just blurted out a marriage proposal. She was totally thrown like, where's this coming from? She wasn't really into the whole wedding thing anyway. The guy gave her this weird look. Then, out of nowhere, he just chomped a bite out of the apple she was holding. The girl thought, okay, I'm starting to get how these beast people roll. She wiped the juice off her man's lips and said yes. If he wanted to do the whole ceremony thing, she was game. Next thing you know, the apple hit the ground, but nobody even noticed. They locked lips in a kiss that was both sweet and super intense. Happy Henrietta spilled the beans that she already knew Iris had accepted the little glutton's proposal. Miss Green was planning to take charge and organize their wedding herself. She was convinced nobody could handle this better than she could. Iris pointed out that Henrietta wasn't even married herself, but her little sister countered that she had a married friend. This friend will help organize a wedding worthy of the imperial family. It also turned out that another guest was expected to arrive at the mansion soon. Because of all the rumors swirling around, a priest from the Holy Kingdom is coming to the mansion to sort things out. When the priest arrived, he said that Kay's father was worried about the family's reputation, since guardians of the relics are supposed to have spotless reputations. Kay thought marriage was just between two people and didn't see why he needed his dad's permission. The priest asked, with a sharp edge, if the Earl actually believed he'd gotten where he was completely on his own. The owner of the mansion wasn't about to put up with the priest's attitude. With a dangerous tone in his voice, the dark-haired man told him to cut the pointless bravado. Kay pointed out that only his bloodline can touch the relics and live, so no one can take away their right to be guardians. The priest, scared, tried to remind him that he speaks for the Holy Pope, and he won't stand for this kind of disrespect. The guest added that the church opposes the marriage to this woman, and that this marriage stains the honor of the sacred kingdom. Therefore, the Pope is graciously dissolving the Earl's marriage to this woman, and urges him to marry the woman he has chosen. Kay asked to confirm if the Pope himself had relayed these words. After getting confirmation, the Earl replied that he understood the Pope's wishes and continued drinking his tea. Green figured the old man wouldn't dare go against him, so this must be some kind of dirty trick. It was a shame that no one but Caveland seemed to notice. The brunette asked the guy what would happen if the words about his wife were actually a lie. Kay then asked what the church would do if all the rumors turned out to be false. The priest was yelling that it was all true, 'cause the article was in a legit newspaper. The dude tried to argue that the count was just smitten with the girl and had lost his mind. Kay shot back that marriage is a vow between two people, and if the rumors are true, he'll take responsibility and get a divorce. But if the rumors are BS, then someone's deliberately trying to trash his family name. In that case, the Pope himself will have to issue a public apology and give his official blessing to the marriage.